This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is present, and we'll take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of agenda.
That council adopts the agenda for the meeting of June 15th, 2020 as presented.
Someone to move it and second it. Moved by Councillor Chapman and seconded by Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we do have a public meeting this evening. Could I have the resolution, please?
That council do now commence a public meeting under the Planning Act at 7:01 p.m. to receive input from the public with respect to the proposed amendment to the town's zoning bylaw 5799 for lands known municipally as 50 and 52 Victoria Street South in the town of Aylmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Moved by Councillor Barber and seconded by Councillor Oslach. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Take notice that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Aylmer will hold a virtual public meeting on Monday, June the 15th, 2020, commencing at 7 p.m. to consider a proposed amendment to the Town of Aylmer zoning bylaw 5799 under Section 34 of the Planning Act. The lands affected by the zoning bylaw amendment are located on the west side of Victoria Street South between Pine Street and South Street and are known municipally as 50 Victoria Street South and 52 Victoria Street South in the town of Aylmer. The subject lands comprise two abutting lots, with each lot having an area of approximately 339 square meters or 3,649 square feet, a frontage of 11.1 meters, 36.4 feet, and a depth of 30.5 meters, 100 feet. It is intended that the existing single detached dwellings be removed and that one half of a semi-detached dwelling be erected on each lot. The amendment to the zoning bylaw changes the zoning on the subject lands from the residential type 1 R1 zone to the residential type 2 R2 zone. Permitted uses of the R2 zone include a semi-detached dwelling, home occupation, and an accessory use. The proposed semi-detached dwelling would be subject to minimum yard and setback standards as set out in Section 9 of the zoning bylaw. The lands are designated low-density residential in the Town of Aylmer official plan. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment is considered to be in conformity with the relevant policies of the official plan. Any person may attend the virtual public meeting and has had the opportunity to make written or verbal representation in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment as outlined in the notice of public meeting. The virtual public meeting is currently available on the homepage of www.aylmer.ca. If a person or public body that files an appeal of a decision of the Corporation of the Town of Aylmer in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Corporation of the Town of Aylmer before the proposed zoning bylaw, a local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss all or part of the appeal. Council will hear comments in the following order. First will be the applicant agent. Second, Director of Corporate Services. Any questions, additional comments based on council decisions or questions. Public individuals are asked to clearly state their name and address for the record of the clerk. And then the clerk, if there are any additional communications received with respect to this application, and then back to the Director of Corporate Services for clarification if needed, and also the applicant agent may clarify if required. So we will start with the applicant agent. And I don't believe they're present this evening. So we'll move to the Director of Corporate Services. Could you elaborate on this, please, Cale?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The application here is pretty straightforward. It's a transition from an old R1 zoning on a smaller lot in the south end of town. The R2 zoning is more reflective of where the zoning bylaw has this size of lot. So the proposed use of 1/2 of a semi-detached dwelling on each side of the lot is actually a very good use of the property, and it is reflective of how these lots are envisaged to be used going forward.
Okay, thank you. From the public, are there any questions, concerns? I don't believe there are. We'll move to the clerk. Did you get any letters or anything from the public?
Through you, Madam Chair, we did receive correspondence from the Catfish Creek Conservation Authority, noting that they've got no concerns with this application.
Okay, thank you. And before we get clarification from the Director of Corporate Services, are there any questions, comments that he needs to clarify for everyone? Or is everyone clear with this? No questions or comments? Okay, any further statements from you, Cale?
Madam Chair, if I just could mention that the reason for there being no particular public comment on this is that following the notice, we did not have any members of public who registered and wished to comment to the application. That's why we have moved quickly past that section, just for the people's benefit who are watching, following along. Any of these public meetings, we can conduct them where the public can have their say, but they do need to register their interest in the topic prior to the meeting.
Perfect. So obviously no one registered. So, okay, thank you very much. So I guess that concludes the meeting. So I'm looking for a resolution from the clerk.
That council do now adjourn the public meeting at 7:07 p.m.
Someone to move and someone to second. Moved by Councillor Charlton and seconded by Councillor Chapman. All those in favor? And that's carried. Now we'll move on to the next resolution. I believe there's one for report 2020.
That report Corp 2020 entitled 50 Victoria Street South Zoning Bylaw Amendment Analysis be received for information. And that report Corp 2120 entitled 52 Victoria Street South Zoning Bylaw Amendment Analysis be received for information. And that council consider giving 3 readings to the zoning bylaw amendment for 50 Victoria Street South to change from a residential type 1 to a residential type 2 zone to allow for the construction 1/2 of a semi-detached dwelling. And further, that council consider giving 3 readings to the zoning amendment for 52 Victoria Street South to change from a residential type 1 to a residential type 2 zone to allow for the construction of 1/2 of a semi-detached dwelling.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move in second. Moved by Councillor Ham, seconded by Councillor Barber. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to approval of the minutes from the regular council meeting on June the 1st.
That council approves the following minutes. Regular council virtual session held on June the 1st, 2020.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and seconded by Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is the Police Service Board minutes to receive. Someone to move and second. Councillor Oslach and seconded by Councillor Barber. Questions or comments concerning the minutes? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is the consent agenda.
That items A to E of the June 15th, 2020 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move and second. Councillor Chapman, and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or concerns with the consent agenda this evening? Councillor Charlton? I think you're muted. Oh, okay, thanks.
I got it. Yeah, through your worship. Letter E, we didn't qualify for funding for our water storage refurbishment. So we do reapply then next year if there are funds available.
I think I'll turn this over to the CAO. She may have a bit more information to offer. Do you mind answering that, Jenny, please?
Certainly, Your Worship, through you. So now, what we'll do now, we're not certain that there will be another grant opportunity, and of course, right now with the COVID implications with the provincial and federal budgets, it really is an unknown. However, staff will kind of regroup and provide a council report in the future related to this project, which was approved in the 2020 budget. It had been kind of split over 2020 and 2021. And so we'll regroup and provide council a report in the future related to opportunities and recommendations related to how we can manage the project and fund it in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other concerns with the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is the first item of the action items, and it's report CAO 4620.
That report CAO 4620, entitled Assignment and Consent Agreement, be received for information, and that council authorize an assignment of the existing lease agreement at 105 White Street from PFI Group Incorporated to Desmine Holdings Incorporated on the terms set out in the assignment and consent agreement, and further that council consider giving 3 readings to the bylaw authorizing this assignment and consent agreement.
Okay, someone to move and second this. Moved by Deputy Mayor Andrews and seconded by Councillor Chapman. This is a pretty straightforward report. If there are questions, I can't imagine any, but if you do have some. Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is report CAO 4920.
That report CAO 4920, entitled Service Delivery Review Participation, be received for information, and that council authorize an analysis for joint shared services with municipal partners in close geographical proximity, namely Bayham, Malahide, Central Elgin, and Elmer, and participate in the service delivery review discussions with the Township of Malahide and others, noting that staff priority will be for managing the needs of the current declared emergency, and that the review for planning and development is not supported at this time, and that the review for fire service is deferred until such time as the approved 2020 fire service level review project is completed, and that the review for recreation services is deferred until the town of Elmer has undertaken an updated Parks and Recreation master plan, and further, that any proposed shared joint services discussions are presented to council prior to developing significant work plans or financial commitments.
Okay, someone to move and second. Moved by Councillor Oslage and seconded by Councillor Ham. Jenny, would you mind giving us an overview of this report? It's quite in-depth, so I'm sure there will be some questions afterwards.
Okay, certainly, through you, Your Worship. As previously reported to Council, the Township of Malahide has received some funding to complete a service delivery review, both of their own operations as well as doing a review or investigation into potential opportunities for joint or shared services with other municipalities. They've specifically identified that the likely municipalities will be Bayham, Elmer, and Central Elgin, and that's just simply because those are the municipalities that are closest to, but it could be others as well as they go through this process. The consultant, the township consultant, had some preliminary discussions, if you will, with the township council, and they've recommended that they look in a few different areas. One was development approvals. The next was fire and emergency services, parks and recreation, as well as any others that might come up during those discussions. Staff has had one preliminary discussion with the consultant and the township staff prior to this the meeting tonight. I've provided some preliminary thoughts to both the staff and to the consultant, which all are included in the report that I gave you this evening. So if we just go through the specific services that were identified in the area of development approvals, as council is aware, we have modified and made changes to our development approvals process, making it much more efficient, and timelier, much more customer service friendly than what it had perhaps been in the past. And because the priorities for the urban and rural municipalities are so different, and not likely that there would be too many synergies in planning approaches, we are recommending that the development approvals review not take place with the town of Elmer. Also note that the town of Elmer will soon have a finalized official plan document that Kale's been working on for the last year and a half-ish and a bit. And so as part of that process, we've done some public consultation, and that public input, it will be included in the official plan document and is a guide for council and staff related to our community priorities as a result of that. The next area that was identified by the consultant was fire and emergency services. So at the previous council meeting, council already passed a resolution indicating that they wish for the police costing to take a priority. Through discussions with the township staff, that was communicated to them. Certainly no concern on their part for the consultant to take that on as the first piece, looking at emergency services. And as it relates to fire service, staff is suggesting that we complete the fire service delivery review that has been approved by council as part of the 2020 budget. That study has been initiated or started already. And we are hoping that by the end of summer, we will have some feedback related to the outcomes of that study. We understand that a similar type study has already been undertaken by the township, and the result of that is that they have done some previous restructuring of their department. And as I understand, I'm not certainly well versed in their fire service, but as I understand, they've adjusted their fire halls from 4 to 3 as part of that process. So I think to benefit the consultant in a review and for our council to understand whether we have sufficient capacity to provide for additional service, it would be best for us to have our service review completed, and that will focus on the needs, the specific needs of our community based on our residential growth and current residential services, as well as our industrial and commercial areas. As it relates to the recreational service, the town has identified, and we had discussions in our 2020 budget process, that we planned on using part of our municipal modernization fund to do a complete Parks and Rec master plan in 2021. And so what I'm recommending here is that perhaps we want to postpone a look at recreation until we've started to undertake that process. And then perhaps at that time, there might be opportunity to include the township staff and perhaps the consultant if they are still engaged at that time, so that we can look at not only the desired Parks and Recreation offering of our current community, but perhaps the Township of Malahide too, in the sense that perhaps this is something the town and the township could do together. And we might be able to share the costs of that review, as well as continue to share in any additional Parks and Recreation planning in the future, if you will. So that was kind of what I had thought there. As you know, there are a number of joint and shared service agreements that already exist, and I included a number of those in my report just for the purpose of, a bit of a reminder. We kind of forget as we go down the road how many joint and shared services we already provide. It may not be a total exhaustive inventory, but there are a number of them that we do have joint and shared services, and not just with municipalities in our area, but we're doing contracts and services with folks outside the area as well as not just municipalities, but in some cases private enterprise as well. So those are all included there, just as an FYI for council and the public. So in order for joint services to be successful, there has to be a win-win on both sides of the table. So when we've looked at opportunities in the past, and that's not certainly to suggest that there are not any opportunities to look at, but when we have looked in the past, we have found that because Aylmer is 100% urban compared to the other municipalities in Elgin, who are more rural or a combination of both, we have found some misalignment of services just because Aylmer is that urban center, and typically there seems to be more of a rural or agricultural interest otherwise with the other municipalities. And in addition, and I had mentioned some of this with the consultant as well, because Aylmer has such a condensed geography, it really does lend itself in many cases for more cost-effective provision of service than those municipalities where they have many kilometers of roads, if you will, for example. So one example I can give you is on garbage collection contracts. So Aylmer is able to secure a fairly cost-effective contract with for garbage collection simply because the collector only needs to pick up within a 5-kilometer radius, if you will. So it's less staff that they need, fewer trucks, less wear and tear on their trucks, that kind of thing. So those are some of the things that we have found in the past when we've looked at these. In addition, as well, and Mary can speak to this afterwards if she wishes, the county is also doing a service delivery review at the moment. And I had identified with both the township and the consultant that I had concerns in the sense that those were happening at the same time. Certainly not any fault of the townships. It's just simply the way it was with the modernization grants that were being offered. The town of Aylmer also made application for service delivery review at the time that the province offered these, and we were not successful. But what I had hoped to achieve through our service delivery was, number one, certainly to look for joint and shared services outside of Aylmer, but number two, some assistance in gaining the definitions and the analysis that we are going to require for our asset management programs going into next year. There is a component of that legislation that will require that you identify your service levels and consult with the public on the same. So that discussion will allow for council to have an understanding, a more fulsome understanding of the services that you provide and at what level, and what the general public wishes to have and how much they're willing to pay for these things, if you will. So unfortunately, the service delivery reviews that the province awarded did not align itself with the asset management program. So those pieces didn't quite line up the way we had hoped they might. So in addition, I just, again, I wanted to identify with council that at the moment, although the township did receive word from the province that they had now until September to finalize their service delivery review, I do continue to have concern about being able to commit the staff time to do a thorough job in the service delivery review, since we're dealing with the current health emergency. And I think that's about all I have, Mary.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Just to add to what you mentioned, we are working on our service delivery review at the county, but we're just getting our list put together. And also we're trying to put it together with our strategic plan, which we're not totally finished with either. So I can't give a lot of comments about it because we're still working on things. But as soon as we get more information, I'll definitely let council know where we're heading at the county level. Now, are there any questions or comments about this? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I understand we were turned down for this service delivery grant, but I think we can reapply next year. Is that not true?
I'll ask Jenny. Could you answer that, please, Jenny?
Yes, certainly, through you, Your Worship. I am not aware of another funding. I mean, there may be opportunity in the future, but I'm not aware that there will be another one next year. We haven't. I've received no communication to that effect at this stage.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. As was mentioned, we do presently share a number of combined services, and they're working out well for both municipalities. As was said, it's a win-win for both sides. I think it's important, with one service review underway and another one contemplated for next year, that at least we keep our minds and our thoughts and our think outside the box mentality going, so that if an opportunity presents itself to share services with a neighbor, that we look at it based on the merits at that particular time, because it has worked for both sides. And as long as we're striving toward that end, it makes sense for all municipalities.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other questions, comments about this report? Well, thank you, Jenny. And do you have another comment?
Yeah, and just to elaborate a little bit on Councillor Barber's comments, I think one of the perfect examples related to that will be the fire communications equipment purchase that was done that offered the an advanced and up-to-date ability for fire communication. So that's kind of through their, when they're for dispatch and that kind of thing. And that is that was a program that the fire chiefs had discussions with and brought back to council, and actually includes all lower tier municipalities in the county. And it has worked out very well. And I believe, if council recalls, we did an agreement related to that at the previous council meeting that would, for insurance purposes, and also to identify that equipment in our asset management plan. And so, there are a number of, if you look at the listing, there are a number of joint and shared services that we already take part in that really have been very beneficial. And certainly, staff are always open to having those discussions. The CAOs are often looking for ways to cut corners and be more efficient, save money. And so those types of discussions occur almost daily, if you will. So I just wanted to provide that as well.
Thanks, Jenny. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is report CAO 5020.
That report CAO 5020, entitled Energy Management Plan Annual Reporting, be received for information, and that council authorize the 2020 energy reporting documents be posted to the town's website to meet the reporting requirements under the Ontario Regulation 507-18 of the Electricity Act 1998.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second this report. Councillor Chapman, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Andrews. Jenny, did you have anything further to add for council on this particular report?
Nothing too much, Mayor French. This satisfies our requirements under the Energy Management Reporting, OREG 507-18. We are currently working on some additional analysis that will compare energy usage and greenhouse emissions from 2019 over 2018, which we typically do provide with the annual report, but we just weren't able to get that pulled together in time. So we'll bring that analysis back to council at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments about this report? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 5120.
That report CAO 5120, entitled Emergency Control Group Recovery Plan, be received for information, and that council endorse the Emergency Control Group decision for the reopening of park amenities as outlined in this report, noting that there is inherent corporate risk associated with doing so, and further, that effective June 16th, 2020, the disc golf course, tennis courts, skate park, basketball court, and splash pad are permitted to open as a part of the town's soft reopening plans, with other areas reopening as permitted by the province of Ontario and upon consultation and agreement by the Emergency Control Group.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslech, and seconded by Councillor Barber. Are there any questions or comments? And did you have anything further to add, Jenny, before we go to the questions and comments?
Certainly, Your Worship. Just a couple of things just to highlight on this report. We are recommending the reopening of our parks amenities. There are still a couple of amenities that have not been specifically mentioned in the provincial release, but we have followed up with Southwest Public Health to get some guidance and direction with them in relation to so for example, the pavilions and the bandshell have not specifically been identified, and we are trying to find out whether they can be opened as well. In addition, as you are aware, the splash pad is permitted to be open, and staff have had a look at that. And have gotten some recommendations from Southwest Public Health in relation to how we manage the opening of a splash pad. And it will essentially require that we assign staff during hours of operation for the splash pad. That's an added cost, if you will, over what we would have normally done. Normally, the splash pad is just kind of, it's turned on and people are able to use it as they arrive. Under our current conditions, we will be required to fence the area off and monitor for social distance as well as the numbers permitted within like a fenced area to 10. So what we're recommending is that we assign 2 staff, and we may have to go out and hire students in order to staff this, and that we operate the splash pad from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on a daily basis. And I apologize, I didn't have this in the report. It was kind of the last minute. We were researching this last minute Friday afternoon, and so I missed it in the report. But I have done some analysis in relation to the cost. So with this, the staffing as well as the signage, the disinfectant, and the fencing that we would need to erect, I think we're looking at about $12,000 to $15,000 in additional cost to run the splash pad this year if council approves. I also wanted to identify that although we've indicated June the 16th or tomorrow, it may be a couple, 2-3 days before if council approves, that we are able to secure the fencing and get all of our protocols and whatnot in place, as well as the staffing. So we ask that the public be patient with us as we work through this, again, if council approves. And then one further additional comment I can provide, the province has also allowed for pools to be opened. And as council is aware, our pool is operated, our programming is operated by an outside party. It's a YWCA. And we had already reported to council on I think it was June 1st meeting that they had decided not to proceed with the 2020 season. So again, we have reached out to the Y to see whether with the new provincial announcement, whether they were able or interested in providing some programming this year. And they have indicated that unfortunately with the timing and then the additional costs for staff training and the protocols that they would be required to have, in addition, because of the numbers, the restriction in numbers, they couldn't just have the pool open to full capacity either. So they have indicated that they're not interested in looking at the 2020 season. And I also wanted just for a point of interest for you, the province has also announced that any of the pools in their provincial parks, although they are permitted to be opened, will not be opened in 2020. So it just gives you a sense of the amount of lead time that you need in order to open a pool. In our case, we'd be 3 to 4 weeks by the time our staff were able to open it up and get it inspected. And then, of course, the Y would need to secure staffing and train everybody. They'd have to have protocols in place to disinfect the entire pool bathhouse area, as well as everything within the pool compound. So it's just, I'm afraid, too daunting this year for them to consider. So I think that's all I had, Mayor French.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Councillor Charlton, I noticed you had your hand up. Do you still have a question? Or did it get answered for you?
No, I just wanted to comment on the report. It's a great report. It's quite detailed and very thorough. And it's just not a matter of tearing this fence down and turning the water on. It's got to be done right, and it's got to be done safe. And so it is going to take a little time, and it's going to cost us some money. But it's a great report, and I think we're going in the right direction. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Councillor Barber, you're first, and then Councillor Oslach.
Thank you, Your Worship. As time goes by and the standards may or may not change in regards to specifically the splash pad, if the regulations are relaxed, would staff then advise council to seek a different direction in the event of that relaxation without having necessarily to come to a council meeting? Bearing in mind that the meetings are less frequent during the summer. If the 10 capacity is softened to some degree to allow more, or if the fencing or the staff is not required, would we be advised, and can we make the changes on the fly?
Okay, Jenny, would you care to answer that question for Councillor Barber?
Certainly, Your Worships. Yes, certainly we can manage that, Councillor Barber. The decisions in relation to the parks and the pool, town hall, all of those decisions have been made by the Emergency Control Group. We did want to bring this report to council so that you thoroughly understood a number of areas. Number one, we felt more comfortable in bringing or opening the splash pad with an additional, perhaps $15,000 of cost that we identified that with you prior to. If things are relaxed and we're able to allow additional people within the compound, or we're able to remove the fencing, certainly the control group will manage that with the staff internally, and be able to react to that. This really was, staff wanted to be sure that council would endorse the additional costs in relation to the splash pad. As well, the control group did want to identify that there is some inherent corporate risk in the reopening process, and I included the comments from our solicitor in the report, and we included, I believe it's attachment 1, which was a letter that was written by Mayor French, who also sits on the control group, in relation to our concerns about the liability for the corporation. And so that's been communicated with AMO in the hopes that they'll lobby on our behalf.
Did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Barber?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that. And I respect that council very quickly, from a Friday announcement to a Monday council, and hopefully with a 2 or 3 day opening. That's a pretty quick turnaround, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
And next, Councillor Oslach.
Thank you, Your Worship. I read over the regulations from the province for stage 2, and I have had several calls, regardless on Facebook or telephone calls, about yard sales. Everybody's confused about yard sales, and I found that reading over the provincial regulations on stage 2, there's no mention of yard sales. Where do we stand on yard sales in Elmer?
Jenny, I'm sure you have information from the public health unit about that.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. And again, the control group has had some discussions, and Kale has generously offered to take the lead on this process.
Thank you.
So we, because garage sales are not going to be under the definition of public health authority, because they're private entities that are, generally speaking, because they're private entities. However, they have given us, and I circulated today, some guidelines in relation to what they recommend people should be looking after or doing if they're going to provide a yard or garage sale. And the control group has had the discussion, and what we plan to do is provide those guidelines from Southwest Public Health to anybody that advertises for a yard sale. That's going to be what we attempt to do. In addition, the guidelines will be posted to our website so that anybody who runs a garage sale can go to our website and have a look there. The information is also available on Southwest Public Health, or should be shortly. Councillor Oslich, they just released it today, so we should be able to find it in the coming week at any rate.
Thank you very much. This is a great concern of a number of residents in Elmer, because it's yard sale and garage sale time. And we've been without it for 3 months.
Yeah. Are there any further questions or comments about this report? Well, I would like to thank the staff for writing this report. As Councillor Charlton said, it's a very informative report, and it's taken a lot of time, but it's certainly enlightening as well, so we can see all the things that the staff have been working on. So I guess we'll vote at this time. So everyone in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 5220.
That report CAO 5220 entitled Farmers Market be received for information, and that council provide direction regarding any future action.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second this resolution. Councillor Charlton and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions, comments about this? Jenny, did you have any further information about this that you want to discuss?
Nothing too much, Mayor French. Interesting piece of research. I had to go back in the memory bank to remember what the history was on these on the farmers markets, and it also caused for me to do a bit of research on what farmers markets may be available, and so I have provided a number of markets that are available in the area, because you do forget from time to time. So it's a good refresher for us. We also, through the research, we have identified that there are 3 kind of commercial entities that do provide local produce, if you will, on a regular basis right in town. And specifically, that was No Frills, Elmer Value Mart, and Elgin Feeds. And they do a pretty good job of providing some of that local produce as well. As it related to the complex, so a couple of concerns there. Number one, it's zoned institutional there, and so it doesn't support farmers market. But further to that, as you know from the previous report, the tap is opening with the province in relation to kind of the services that we've had to shut down. And so I am hopeful that we will hear some word, if you will, related to the operations of the complex. And, I'm hopeful that by the end of August, we'll be looking to put some ice back in that facility, even if it's on a reduced capacity, if you will, but that at least perhaps one ice pad may be available in the future. And we just, at this stage, we just simply don't know. But anyway, so that would be the only other thing that I wanted to identify that would specifically concern me with that facility, that there may be opportunity yet over the summer and into the fall that some sort of programming may be available in that building yet.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Questions or comments about this report? Councillor Charlton?
I just want to thank the staff for doing the research and providing this report, and I think the farmers will appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Oslich.
Yes, Your Worship. I have only one concern. The old farmers market at the sales barn, throughout the summer, all the Amish brought their produce and chickens and rabbits and vegetables and fruit and everything into that. Now we're eliminating that part of the population. I was just wondering if Value Mart could have a thing in their back parking lot where they park their horses and buggies, if maybe they could bring their produce in and sort of just have a little market for Amish, maybe once a week, like maybe a Saturday morning. It's an idea.
Jenny, do you have a response to that?
I certainly couldn't speak on behalf of Value Mart or No Frills where some of those activities might be possible, or Elgin Feeds, but perhaps the members of the BIA would like to have that discussion at the committee level to see whether there may be some interest in promoting that sort of thing.
And Deputy Mayor Andrews, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you. Through your worship, just a comment. Thank you, staff, for putting through all the links to the local suppliers that we have. You know, they're the ones right now that are working with the health units. They're putting the signs on the floors. They're limiting, they're doing everything they can to prevent the spread of the COVID. So I think it's really smart to leave that in their hands. And it's you know, a 5-minute jaunt most of the time out of town to visit these little farmers and support them. So in, you know, talking about the Amish, I was down in that area on the weekend, and there's all kinds of little roadside shops and displays that they have. So, you know, they come in with horse and buggy. We can go to them. We have cars. So I think that we can still support everyone in the community. And let's just leave that up to them, and we can just drive out, have our cash, and we're all set.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Is there your hand up, Councillor Osage?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. A question to Deputy Mayor Andrews. I went out searching for farmers markets for strawberries the other day, and I drove all over the place. I never found any markets. Where did you find one?
So through your worship, just out and about on Glencolin. I went down to the little bake shop just off of Walker Road. I didn't see strawberries, but I think they're just kind of nicely out. So maybe they tucked their signs away when they saw you come down the road, Councillor Oslash.
I drove all the way down Glencolin Road all the way to the end, and I never seen it.
Well, I saw a lot. So.
Okay.
Jenny, did you have something you want to add?
Just one further comment in relation to the strawberries, if you will. I did go to a farmer's market on the weekend. I won't tell you which one because I don't feel that's appropriate. However, in having a discussion with the lady that runs the market, she had indicated, because I did go for strawberries and I wanted the full flat and I wasn't able to get them. They have been hit pretty hard with that late spring frost. So they're waiting for their second batch of strawberries to come on. So you'll likely see an overabundance of them, especially in the next couple of weeks with the warm weather. I think they'll be out and they'll be happy to see us all.
Councillor Osage?
Yes, I had the same comment when I visited a few farmers markets locally, and they said the frost hindered the berries. I got the same answer.
Okay, are there any further questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 5320.
That report, CAO 5320, entitled Statutory Holiday for Canada Day Substitution, be received for information, and that Council authorize a substitute statutory holiday for Canada Day on July 3rd, 2020.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second this. Deputy Mayor Andrews, and seconded by Councillor Tarleton. Are there any questions or comments concerning this report? Okay, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Corp 1920.
That report, Corp 1920, entitled 25 Center Street, be received for information, and that council authorize the extension of the notice period for the YWCA lease at 25 Center Street to 120 days.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Moved by Councillor Chapman and seconded by Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments concerning this report? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is Corp 2220.
That report, Corp 2220, entitled 211 Talbot Street East zoning bylaw amendment application, be received for information, and that council accepts the application for zoning bylaw amendment as completed and sets July 13th, 2020 as the date for the public meeting as required under the sections 3412 of the Planning Act.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Moved by Councillor Chapman and seconded by Councillor Osledge. Did you have anything further to add, Kale?
Through you, Your Worship, not a great deal to add. You may recall this application coming before council prior to its application to the Land Division Committee at the end of 2019. The property is an already constructed semi-detached dwelling, and the Cyma Wegler Homes has constructed that and has now found buyers for them. So looking to complete the land division, which required the change of zoning to allow that to move forward. So this is just the final part of that process.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And the next item up is Corp 2320.
That report, Corp 2320, entitled Provincial Reopening Patio Extensions, be received for information, and that council directs staff to process temporary patio extension applications through the existing site plan control process and waive the current $200 application fee.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. Did you have anything further to add to this report, Kale?
Through you, Your Worship, this is a very moving landscape. You see that this announcement was only made on June the 8th, and it was preemptive for when patios are eligible to reopen safely. And this is just clearing through council the method in which staff will consistently and fairly deal with these applications. We may see many, we may see none. It's just to address that the site plan process is probably the best way for the municipality to consult its requisite departments and make sure that you can provide a safe operation of an extended patio for the COVID period. And it gives a method for the municipality to satisfy the act by saying the municipality has to say that it does not object to the extension. So our site plan process will be the best way for us to handle that. And this is just clearing that through council and being ready for whatever applications may come.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Osledge.
Yes, I just have one comment. We have a licensed patio at the Legion, and we're going through the renovations of our lounge. We have a Service Canada grant to rejuvenate our lounge downstairs, and it's going to take another couple of weeks to do that. I don't see us opening up our patio. I don't think it's going to be feasible. I don't think the number of people on our patio will justify having a steward in. And also, I think phase 3 will be coming pretty soon. And I'm waiting for that so I can open up the whole building, basically. And that's the way I'm leading the Legion.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item up is new business and matters of urgency. And next up is suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with first, second, and third readings of Bylaw 3220, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 5218, to authorize the signing of an agreement between the corporation and the Young Women's Christian Association of St. Thomas for the operation of the Elmer Pool. Bylaw 3320, being a bylaw to amend an agreement between PFI Group Incorporated and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer as it relates to property known municipally as 105 White Street in the Town of Elmer. And Bylaw 3420, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 5799, 5052 Victoria Street South, Elmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews, any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, Josh?
Right. That council gives 3 readings to Bylaw 3220, being a bylaw to amend 5218. Bylaw 3320, being a bylaw to amend an agreement between PFI Group Incorporated and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer as it relates to property known municipally as 105 White Street. And Bylaw 3420, being a bylaw to amend Bylaw 5799.
Okay, someone to move and second this resolution. Councillor Barber and Councillor Ham, any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, the next item up is inquiries by members. Okay. Next item is statements and committee reports. Councillor Barber, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, Your Worship. Took a minute to get the mic on. 2 weeks ago, both the Elgin Primary Water Board and the Elmer Secondary Water Board met on separate occasions. Water consumption is down approximately 8% on both sides of the board. We don't expect that it will have a significant impact on the fiscal bottom line. Interestingly enough, the industrial consumption is down, residential consumption is up. That doesn't normally happen, but obviously with more people at home and less industry and commercial identities, it kind of speaks to reason. There weren't any issues of nonconformity. Water continues to be safe to drink, obviously, and the water boards are moving forward with any minor adjustment that may be required into the budgeting process, but don't expect any major glitches. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other statements and committee reports this evening? Okay, the next report is the report of the mayor, and I don't have too much to report, but I just want to take a moment to congratulate all the students that will be graduating. It's unfortunate they're not going to be able to go to their graduation ceremonies and all the fun stuff that they typically get to do, but we're very proud of all of the students and all their achievements, and we wish them nothing but the best in their future endeavors. Notice of motion, there is none, so meeting closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 8:03 p.m. for the purpose of considering litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Chapman, are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll take about a 5-minute break so that we can move into our closed session. Thank you.